All right, it's time for 49ers grades report card. I think this is going to be a fun way through which to view the 49ers Broncos week 2 preseason game. Obviously, one at the end there with the Trey Lance led game winning drive and the Jake Moody field goal. A couple players getting at least small monkeys off their back, right? Maybe for Trey Lance, it was a little bit bigger, but for Jake Moody, he needed to make that first game winning kick at the buzzer of his life. He also needed to get his 49ers tenure onto the right track after missing 2 field goals and an extra point before the game winning attempt. Anyway, this is going to be A plus through F minus. Yes, you can get an F minus. I do teach a college class. I don't give out F minuses. I usually don't give out A pluses either. But anyway, that's the range of grades that the 49ers can earn. And I think, again, this is just going to be a fun lens through which to dissect some of the game because I have some thoughts about small plays and some plays that people have been talking about online. And I think this is the best way to present those thoughts because we get to go position by position. The best part is that we get to follow along with the 49ers 90-man roster, which is also the 53-man depth chart. So if you guys want to follow along as well, go ahead. I'm going to copy and paste the link if you want to take a look at the roster in the comment section right now. And we'll get through these grades efficiently because I want to go eat dinner. I just swam in some cold water and I want to be hungry sooner rather than later. All right, let's go through these. I'm going to start with special teams. Wasn't good for the 49ers special teams unit. I'm going to give them a D. I mean, they had a muffed punt deep inside their own territory. That was Deshaun Jameson. Didn't get his feet underneath the punt. His body wasn't there to field it like a center fielder. And then Deshaun Jameson ran sideways / backwards on another punt return. Now, I will say that Danny Gray looked good on the opening kickoff return. That's probably where he sprained the joint in his shoulder. And Ronnie Bell did look good on a punt return. So maybe those evened out in a little way, but I think that special teams, you've got to hold serve in that phase of the game. And if you're missing extra points, like Jake Moody missed one yesterday, and if you're a little shaky on field goals, and Jake Moody was a bit shaky on field goals, I mean, even the game winner was a little bit too close for comfort. Well, if you've got that going on, plus a muff punt that you lose, plus a bad punt return, it's hard for me to say that it was an average special teams performance. Plus, they gave up a bigger kick return yesterday. Now, I wouldn't freak out about the 49ers special teams unit. You always see teams struggle in this phase of the game during the regular season when there are injuries, because when there are injuries, there are downstream effects on the roster and who you use on special teams. So one or two key cogs are out of place. All of a sudden, your kick coverage unit is nowhere near as good, or your kick blocking, your return blocking unit is nowhere near as good. So this was the preseason, week 2. The 49ers are obviously rotating through a ton of different guys. This is the 90-man roster, not the 53-man roster. How the special teams unit looks during the preseason with completely different personnel than it's going to have during the regular season is not really relevant, right? So, yeah, I'm going to grade this game in a vacuum, but I'm going to contextualize it outside of the vacuum. They get a D because they need to fix some of the things that went wrong yesterday, but that D doesn't really hold any predictive value for what the 49ers are going to do during the regular season. Now, I talked to Jake Moody after the game. He said that it was a big monkey off his back to knock through that kick to win it, 32 yards, not just because he's getting his 49ers career off to a better start than what we had seen the week prior against the Las Vegas Raiders, but because, again, that was the first walk-off kick of his career. Against Illinois last season as a Michigan Wolverine, Moody hit a game winner, but that one came with 13 seconds left, not as time expired. Now, I think that Tim Kawakami wrote a nice article about Jake Moody on The Athletic, and I might as well pop it up because I like to promote all of our work. And where else are you going to get an article focused on the kicker? I think it's an interesting thing to follow, right? Because this is awesome. You know, Tim, his headline is Jake Moody is the 49ers roller coaster ride at kicker. That was really my motif in tweeting about Jake Moody yesterday. You know, welcome to the new ride at Great America. And Great America, the theme park next to Levi Stadium, is actually going to be closing in, like, I think 2034, so maybe 10 years from now. Maybe Jake Moody will still be kicking for the 49ers then, although he'll have to lessen up on the roller coaster experience, and it's going to have to be a little bit more stable. It's going to have to be like a smooth bullet train instead of the roller coaster. But for now, it's a roller coaster-like experience, And that's what Tim wrote about. So if you want to check out his article, I'm going to copy and paste the link. Go ahead, and it's a great time to sign up for The Athletic for $2 a month. I'm putting that into the comment section right now. So you don't want your kicker to be emulating the Great America theme park. You also don't really freak out about Jake Moody yet because he's been so damn consistent at 49ers practice, right? It's been one of those situations where Jake Moody's just been drilling 60-yarders at practice. It seems that he's not missing even on the really, really tough field goals from big distance. So you don't sit there right now and say, oh, well, he's had a couple shakier games, and the second one was better than the first, and think that he's going to be some kind of bust. Or you don't say, oh, they better go sign Robbie Gould right now. There was an inherent risk for the 49ers in drafting a kicker, and they knew that there might be a little bit of an acclimation period for that kicker, no matter how good he was in college, to the NFL game, because there's such a big psychological aspect to this. And that's why the 49ers have Zane Gonzalez on the roster. Zane is their insurance for Jake Moody in case things go completely haywire. And the reason that Kyle Shanahan kept running Jake Moody out there yesterday is because he wanted to build that confidence in the limited trial run that the 49ers have before the roster cut down. They're really hoping that Jake Moody looks really sharp on Friday against the Chargers, because then you can use Zane Gonzalez as a trade asset instead of as insurance. So he's either insurance or he's a trade asset. Right now, I think that you're still kind of holding on to Zane Gonzalez, making sure everything is good with Jake Moody before you would consider parting with him. But I think that things are turning in the right direction for Jake Moody. And I do think that acclimation period is not the most shocking thing in the world. As far as who's going to be the returner, I always thought that Deshaun Jameson was much more suited to be a kick returner, and Ronnie Bell looks much more suited to be a punt returner. That being said, Ronnie Bell only had 13 punt returns in college at Michigan. So it is maybe a little bit hard to believe that the 49ers would enter week one on the road at Pittsburgh with that little experience at such a precarious position. There is a slight chance that Ray McLeod, who broke his wrist not too long ago, will be back in time for week one. But it's looking more unlikely than likely that would happen. So the 49ers might be scouring the waiver wire. They might be scouring the free agent market before September 10th, just to bring somebody in with a high floor at punt returner, maybe even kick returner, before they play the Steelers. So we'll see how that works. They'll also get guys like George Odom back, who's the NFL special teams tackle leader last year. I would not obsess over the grade on the screen below me. I think that the 49ers will look a whole lot different personnel-wise with the team that takes the field on September 10th than the team that won the game but did not perform particularly well on special teams against Denver. That being said, there was a game-winning field goal, a walk-off in the 49ers' favor, and special teams does get credit for that. Okay, let's move on to the secondary. I'm saying B- for the 49ers secondary. It's complicated, right? And I'm going to open up the roster here and the depth chart so we can kind of go through the different performances and visualize where the 49ers are. So the secondary is going to be this entire block right here. Charvarius Ward, solid. He got to play a few snaps. Then there was Ambry Thomas, and I've already amended the depth chart to list Ambry Thomas across from Charvarius Ward because I think that the 49ers were leaning this way yesterday. Maybe next week they give Samuel Womack that first audition opposite Charvarius Ward. But I thought, the 49ers threw Ambry into the fire yesterday. By playing him at the cornerback spot opposite of Mooney Ward, the 49ers had Ambry Thomas guarding Jerry Jeudy. And I thought he did a good job against Jerry Jeudy. It got a little harder for Ambry Thomas later in the half when you saw Jalen Virgil run the up and out, the double move on him, and he bid on it. But other than that, Ambry Thomas played a clean game, and he played a really good game against the Raiders. That said, you bite on a double move, it might, leave a bad taste in people's mouths when they watch your outing. And Samuel Womack, on the other hand, had a couple pass breakups and played really, really well. So I think this is a legitimate battle between Ambry Thomas and Samuel Womack, who's got that 4.4 speed. Ambry's fast as well. I mean, both of these guys could move. Samuel Womack probably a little more built physically, but the physicality in Ambry's game has improved. Kyle Shanahan today said that his OTAs this season were the best that he's ever been with the 49ers. I think in general, he's carried a lot of that over to camp. And just the sheer fact that Ambry Thomas and Samuel Womack are playing as well as they are has allowed the 49ers the flexibility to consider moving Diamond Lenore inside to slot on nickel packages and threaten to push Isaiah Oliver out of the mix altogether. Now, I did a cap update on Isaiah Oliver earlier. If the 49ers do cut him, they save a tiny bit of money, but only like $200,000. There'd be a $1.4 million dead money hit because he's got $2.9 million guaranteed. So it wouldn't be the most financially efficient thing to do. A trade would be more financially efficient, but I don't know if they're willing to trade him. I think, in all likelihood, Isaiah Oliver, they acquired a big nickel for a reason because they want a little bit more size once these games get real, once this season progresses closer to the postseason. So it might be in their best interest to keep Isaiah Oliver, not play him as much as they maybe thought they would. He could be depth in case, shit hits the fan at outside cornerback or at or in the slot if they're not going to start him in the slot. So it's going to be interesting to see what becomes of Isaiah Oliver. But right now, the plan that the 49ers initially had when they signed him, I think, is being amended. And it's being amended because Oliver has not been as great in coverage as they thought that he might be. They thought they could have their cake and eat it too with a bigger slot. But it's also being amended because there is exceptional depth that the 49ers have showcased at the slot cornerback position due to the depth that they are showcasing through the rising players on the outside. And that is Ambry Thomas. That is Samuel Womack. Deshaun Jameson, he could play inside or outside. I know that I'm talking about him. So all of these guys can potentially do good stuff for the 49ers. All right, let's move on. Give me 1 second here as we move on to the next position group. I have to answer one message. We're going to go to the linebackers in just a second. And as we go through, okay, here we go. I've got this ready now. I had to check one thing there on my email. All right, on to the linebackers for the 49ers. We got an A for the linebackers. A nice flat A. Not an A+, not an A-. I mean, did I talk about the safeties, by the way? Hold on. I know I got distracted there. First, let me talk about the safeties. Then we're going to get to the linebackers. I know I talked about the corners. I thought that Ambry played well on a snap, but got beat on the double move. Samuel Womack, 2 pass breakups. Deshaun Jameson made a tackle, but on special teams, he wasn't great. We didn't see all too much of Diamador Lenore after the starters got pulled. But the safeties, Talanoa Hufanga wasn't in there at the start. Deshaun Gibson didn't play. Then you had Jair Brown, who I thought played a solid game. Some people are a little bit upset about his ability to shed blocks in the run game. The thing, though, is that safeties aren't really there to shed blocks. If you get a hat on a safety, especially with a bigger player, the blocker's probably going to win. The safety's got to be able to get around the blocks. The linebackers are the guys who are the better block shedders. The defensive linemen are the better block shedders. So, again, it's a collective sport. I thought Jair Brown had his second straight game with a touchdown-saving tackle. I think that's what stood out about him. And I'm just really excited to, see these rookies. And, you have somebody like Taylor Hawkins as well. We'll see if he gets a chance with the 49ers at some point this year. The point is to see them in the context of the strongest 11 on the field, right? And Jair Brown got a little bit of that when he played with the first team, but Bosa's not there yet. Deshaun Gibson didn't play. We'll probably see Jair Brown out there in some 3 safety sets. And the better the personnel is around you, the better the situation is going to be as far as how a safety is going to be set up, especially in the run game. You're talking about having to shed blocks. If you've got good personnel around you, other guys are winning their one-on-ones, the safety is going to be hunting. The safety is going to be roaming around trying to make plays. He's not going to be stuck on blocks, which just goes to show you how much of a team sport football is. So anyway, it wasn't a perfect performance, and I'm excited to talk to some of the guys in the locker room. about the coverages, how they felt that those held up. I know Steve Wilkes wasn't all too happy about the game against the Raiders. He thought the 49ers lacked some discipline and coverage on the back end. But in general, I do think the 49ers were better in that regard, especially with the early units against the Denver Broncos. And for that, I go B-. I mean, you had the double move that beat Ambry Thomas. You might have had some of those issues against the run game. It's all good, though. It wasn't a horrific defensive performance. It was sullied a little bit at the end when they were on the threes, when Miles Hartsfield missed a couple tackles that both led to touchdowns. So that probably taxed the minus onto the B. We'll give it a B- for the secondary. If you disagree, it's not that serious. Okay, we're moving on to linebackers. Linebackers, as you know, they get an A. And they get an A because these guys are studs. I mean, between Fred Warner, who stared down Russell Wilson after one of those scrambles, Marcelino McCrary-Ball, who almost had an interception, that was courtesy of the defensive line. We'll talk about that in a little bit. I think it was T.Y. McGill on the pressure that created the near pick. D. Winters, who forced a fumble. Jalen Graham, fellow rookie, who forced a fumble. Curtis Robinson, who was flying around. He had Kiava Tizino and Demetrius Flanagan-Foles on the field as well, but especially the two rookies, Winters and Graham. I mean, these guys are studs. I've said this many times before. This is the best linebacker unit in the National Football League. And we should see Dre Greenlaw return for the 49ers this week. TBD on if he plays against the Chargers on Friday. But you look at Warner and you look at Greenlaw and you look at the fact that I think that Winters and Graham are both going to make this 53-man roster with their pursuit abilities, with their intelligence, with their DB backgrounds. The 49ers love that at the linebacker position. You're looking at a room that's going to be stocked well into the future. Dre Greenlaw's entering a contract year. I don't know if they're going to be able to keep him. I think they're really hoping that one of these young guys step up because cap realities. But Fred Warner is a master. He's a Jedi master out there for this linebacker unit. They played well yesterday. They always play well. It seems that the 49ers linebackers are never a problem. And when they were making plays the way they were yesterday, little Jordan Humphrey got just absolutely smashed by Jalen Graham. That forced a safety. The quarterback, Ben DiNucci, the third stringer for the Broncos, couldn't make it to the first down marker on fourth down. When D. Winters awesome angle, chased him down from the middle of the field. Had that, just the instincts, right, to get to DiNucci and then to knock the ball out. There is some special play going on in the 49ers linebacker room. You have to tip your cap to Johnny Holland, who's been the position coach of these guys ever since 2017 when Kyle Shanahan took over. He has done one hell of a job with this room. There's no more D'Amico Ryans. He's in Houston now, but the linebackers have not skipped a beat for the San Francisco 49ers. On to the defensive line. This is tricky. I'm going to give him a B- because you don't have Bosa. You didn't have Drake Jackson. You had Armstead for a bit. I thought Javon Hargrave made some plays yesterday. He's showing us, and guess what? Javon Hargrave, guess who has Jimmy Garoppolo's old locker? And this was a coveted space in the 49ers locker room. Javon Hargrave. And he's this quiet, soft-spoken guy. I told him, hey, that used to be the starting QB's locker right there. And somebody had just told Javon that was the case. And he was like, yeah, man, I'm loving this space. I'm loving the real estate. You have to understand how the 49ers locker room is situated. You've got the lockers that line all of the walls. So all four walls have the most lockers, but that wouldn't be enough space to fit everybody on the football team. So then there are islands in the middle of the locker room. And one of the islands has two lockers side by side. It's Javon Hargrave and Jimmy Garoppolo's old locker with Jake Moody right next to him. And it's prime real estate because you're not crowded by a bunch of guys on either side. You only have one neighbor, and the neighbor's Jake Moody. And Jake Moody seems like a quiet guy, and Javon Hargrave seems like a fairly quiet guy too. So I'm sure that they like that little island. You have the louder guy, who's George Kittle, across stream from you. So the wall facing the island is where George Kittle's locker is. So you might remember press conferences back in those really fun years, 2019, obviously the 49ers Super Bowl year, where George Kittle would do his press conference in front of Jimmy Garoppolo's locker. All he had to do was walk like 15 feet. George Kittle just walked from the wall to the island. So now George Kittle can do press conferences in front of Javon Hargrave's locker after that was switched out, or he could do them in front of Jake Moody's locker. Now, Kittle he has a bunch of action figures, WWE action figures, and he's famously messy. So people don't really want to be by Kittle because he's messy, but he's a fun guy. We just poke fun at Kittle right now. But Christian McCaffrey, when he got traded to the 49ers, got placed either right next to Kittle or two lockers over. Either way, McCaffrey and Kittle are in the same area. They're across from Hargrave and Moody, and it creates this cool environment in the 49ers locker room. Back when Jimmy was there, it created a certain environment. Now Javon Hargrave is going to be there. We'll see how that goes. But anyway, just some locker room dynamics for the 49ers. We talk about the defensive line. We talk about Javon Hargrave. He's going to make plays. 49ers haven't had a pass rusher like him on the inside in the Shanahan era. He's a better pass rusher than DeForest Buckner. We'll see how Hargrave plays the run, but he was an all-around player for Philadelphia. He's going to be playing in more of an attack scheme than he did with the Eagles. So don't be surprised if he goes up over double-digit sacks again. It's going to be fun to see him working alongside Nick Bosa as well. That's obviously something the 49ers can't do right now. The game yesterday was more about the depth pieces, though, because they got most of the time. Austin Bryant led the 49ers with 3 pressures. Cleveland Farrell, a couple pressures as well. Remember, Bryant and Farrell were teammates at Clemson, and I walked up to Austin Bryant's locker. This one's on the other side of the room. And I asked him, what's it like playing for Chris Kasarik? I know you played for Detroit the past couple of years. Now you look down the row of lockers, and there's your former college teammate, Cleveland Farrell. And Bryant just started beaming. He just started talking about how awesome it is to be in what it's essentially a college-like environment. He said that playing for the 49ers reminds him of college football. And guess what? Clemson won a national title at Levi's Stadium. So that was a great defensive line. Bryant, Farrell. And the 49ers are going to be relying on these guys to give them proper depth. They did a good job yesterday. They were getting after the quarterback. They need the depth right now because they're thin along the D line. They're thin. Kerry Hyder suffered a stinger yesterday. So he's playing end this year after he was a tackle last year. He was at end in 2020 when he had 8.5 sacks. He might be out for a couple days. We know Alex Barrett's got a tremendous motor. We know Robert Beal's got potential. We know that Breeland Speaks got off the plane in Las Vegas last week and started making some high-energy plays. And we know Ladarius Hamilton is new. Those aren't established players. So it's going to be up to Farrell and Bryant, who have been around the league for a few years, to give the 49ers the energy to get through these dog days before this football team get some reinforcements. And of course, one of those reinforcements at some point here is going to be Nick Bosa. On the inside, I talked about Hargrave. Kinlaw was sick, so he wasn't out there. You had Kevin Gibbons. I think that he held up decently well. Marlon Davidson might make the 53-man roster. Just talking to somebody with the 49ers about this. Is Marlon Davidson going to make the 53? The chances are increasing that he will. He had a high effort, high motor sack yesterday. He ran down a running back on a screen play to the sideline right before the end of the first half, coming out of the stack as defensive tackle. That's a hungry play. That's the play of somebody that wants to make the football team. So 62, Marlon Davidson. Look out for this guy. I don't think people expected him to make the team, but now that he's playing well, now that he seems to fit in Chris Kasarik's system, realize that the 49ers need some help at defensive tackle. Realize that this is a DT unit that was a little bit thin last year. They might be deeper this year because they have Javon Hargrave and they have Javon Kinlaw not playing a starting role. But Marlon Davidson was a second-round pick out of Alabama. So he's got talent, and this really is nothing to scoff at. And I definitely would keep an eye on him potentially making this football team. Anyway, his performance plus T.Y. McGill's performance with the sack and the pressure that nearly forced the interception, combined with a nice tackle for loss yesterday from Tomase Lolele. And this is the player that was with the 49ers in 2022. They re-signed him. The day that they re-signed him yesterday, he played in the game. To have a tackle for loss, that impressed me enough to give this group a B-. I can't give them. There were plays with the pass rush wasn't there yesterday and all this and all that. B- seems fair to me because part of the grade is, guys are missing. But if you don't show up to the exam, how are you supposed to get a good grade, right? So Nick Bosa needs to show up to help the 49ers with their grade here in the D-line room. All right, we're going to take a water break here in between offense and defense. Everybody doing well? A lot of comments. Looks like people are talking in the chat section about stuff that I'm not talking about, so that's totally fine. You guys have every right to do that. I'm just not going to be reading the chat section. I don't really read it all that much, only when I'm doing Q&A. What's for dinner tonight? That's my big question. I had a great lunch. I think you guys saw it. Rhea's Deli in the Mission, 20th in Valencia. I got the Valencia Street sandwich. Put it on a lunch with Lombardi. So the food is happening well. We're going to try to do a video from the bay, I think, on Thursday from the water. I think it'll be really cool. We got a little camera for the water. So fun plans this week. Just having fun in the city on the days off from training camp. And there are no days off from training camp. All right, 49ers grades. Why don't we move to the offense? We're working our way backwards. We went from special teams to the secondary to linebackers to the D-line, and now we're at the O-line. You give them a big flat C, average. And here's why. The first team offensive line I thought was solid. It was everybody but Trent Williams. And, I'm not including Jalen Moore in the first team offensive line in this judgment. He's more of a second team guy. And I thought that Moore had a couple critical errors. One for sure, and Kyle Shanahan said that he had a couple, so let's say that there were two. And I think that Ty Davis Price might be getting blamed for the sack of Brock Purdy when it was actually Jalen Moore's fault. But I'm not sure about that yet. That's something I have to check on this week. I will say that 1 through 4 right here, Aaron Banks to Colton McKivitz, 49ers first team line was good. And Brock Purdy operated cohesively behind them. Colton McKivitz had 9 pass blocking snaps, and he didn't give up a single pressure. That's probably the biggest news for the 49ers offensive line, right? McKivitz is the new right tackle. He's replacing McGlinchey. His first career action as a first stringer. I mean, in the past, he had started, but he was a backup. His first career action as a first stringer went well. It was a shortened period of time, but to me, it looked like McKivitz belonged out there. That was the Denver first team defense. All good, right? Jake Brendel, I thought, was solid. Spencer Burford, solid. I mean, you could tell that these guys were the ones when they were out there. And the one player who, made a mistake on the Brock Purdy sack on the offensive line, or I think it was, if you go and watch the tape here, let me just explain what's happening right now. People are putting out the all-22 tape of the Brock Purdy sack, and the defensive end kind of blows by Ty Davis Price, who looks like he slips. And everybody's saying, oh, TDP is a terrible pass blocker. But it seems really dubious to me that the 49ers would assign a running back to try to block a defensive end. You normally send a running back to block a linebacker. And if you watch, closely, Jalen Moore blocks nobody. He down blocks. Along with Aaron Banks on the left side. They both down blocked. The 49ers only needed one guy to down block. Jalen Moore also down blocked, hence leaving the defensive end wide open. I think it was 99. I think it was Zach Allen. Leaving the defensive end with a free shot at Ty Davis Price. Ty Davis Price coming off the play fake. They faked the handoff to him. Looked surprised when he saw the defensive lineman in his face. And he just kind of took this weak, shocked, half-hearted dive down into the ground. And obviously Purdy got sacked near the goal line. Now, I don't like to throw either player under the bus until I know for sure. So I hate seeing this stuff like that saying, oh, Ty Davis Price was at fault here when it might have been Jalen Moore. But again, I'll say that I wasn't sure. I'll just say that Jalen Moore down blocked when it seemed that only one player, Aaron Banks, needed to down block. And because of that, Ty Davis Price was like, holy crap, what is a defensive end doing in my face? So I'm going to find out the truth for you this week, and we'll talk about it, and then we'll put some video onto it, and we could have some actual substantive talk. But, it's not fun to be criticized for something that you're not guilty of, right? So if you're Ty Davis Price right now and your family's online and seeing that you're being criticized for a missed pass protection that wasn't your fault, say that it wasn't his fault, I think they'd be pretty upset. So that's one thing that I think we should pride ourselves on, is not jumping to conclusions before we're sure of them, especially when it's in criticism of somebody else. Anyway, that was just one play. I thought that the rest of the plays for the 49ers first team offensive line went well. Where I'm concerned about the offensive line is the depth. And Kyle Shanahan, when I asked him today, said Jalen Moore made a couple mistakes. That means at least 2, right? One of the mistakes was when Sam Darnold was working on 3rd and 5, and He was sacked by Randy Gregory. That was a bust in protection from Jalen Moore. Shanahan blamed it on Moore, not on Sam Darnold. And that might have been Darnold's quote unquote worst play, but it wasn't his fault. It was Jalen Moore's fault. There might, again, we're going to find out if it was Jalen Moore's fault or if it was Ty Davis Price's fault on the Brock Purdy sack. I thought Nick Zakelj was a lot better. He's right here. 1 pressure allowed and 28 pass blocking snaps. I don't think John Feliciano was great, though. He gave up the sack across his face when Sam Darnold was in the game. Thought Leroy Watson slipped this week. He struggled. He gave up 3 pressures over his game. Jason Poe was better. Joey Fisher, Keith Ismail. It was so-so for these guys. Matt Pryor, decent game. In fact, right now, if you look at Matt Pryor, the problem with him is that he's not playing any left tackle. I don't know how the 49ers are supposed to crown him a swing tackle if he's playing only on his natural right side and he's not comfortable on the left. But I think Pryor gave up only 1 pressure yesterday. He was definitely better than Jalen Moore. He was definitely better than Leroy Watson, and those are his 2 competitors at swing tackle. That being said, Kyle Shanahan's talking an awful lot about players on the 49ers roster having competition not only on their own team, but around the whole league, because the 49ers could be active at the waiver wire deadline. Last year, they picked up Blake Hance, an offensive lineman off of waivers, I think off of Cleveland's waivers. This year, they might pick up somebody else, depending on who becomes available. So this is not just, Matt Pryor looks better than Leroy Watson. Matt Pryor looks better than Jalen Moore. The 49ers are going to plug him in at swing tackle. It's not really how it works, right? The whole league will be cutting players, and there's going to be hundreds of unemployed players here in about 9 days, and the 49ers scouting department's going to be busy scouring the offensive line for an upgrade. That's just how you have to build a depth to your offensive line. There are more offensive line spots in the league than there are quality offensive linemen. And because of that, you've got to develop. You've got to scour the market for guys whose skill set you can develop, who might fit you, and then you develop from there. That's how it looks for the 49ers offensive line. Ilm Manning, by the way, gave up a couple pressures yesterday. So Ilm had given the 49ers a clean sheet against the Las Vegas Raiders at left tackle, but he finally struggled to get to the edge a little bit in his action against the Broncos. Still, Cinderella story. Still a guy who, I think once he starts struggling a little bit at tackle, if that starts becoming a persistent thing, 49ers have looked at him as a guard throughout. They were just keeping him at tackle to develop as much versatility as possible. Ilm still has a chance to make this 53-man roster, or at least the practice squad, as a guard. It's just that he has to start drilling at that position. And I think the 49ers are probably looking at him as a practice squad guy just because they've been allowing him to have fun at that tackle position for the time being. But I think in all seriousness, at 6'2", he's shorter. Once, Ilm Manning is pressed into action, I don't really anticipate that being this year. But once that does happen, I think the 49ers are more comfortable with him being a guard. They just view him as a guard. Guards are smaller, they're quicker, better in short area. Tackles are longer, and Ilm Manning at 6'2" is much shorter than the prototypical tackle. All right, that's the offensive line. So as you could tell, mixed bag. Obviously, you had the sacks of Sam Darnold. You had the pressure of Trey Lance. Ilm Manning actually gave up that pressure. That was him and Braden Willis, the tight end, on a double team of Bonito, right? The Dan Bonito coming around the edge. The blindside hit on Lance. He almost got the ball out to Cam Latu. It hit a little short. Latu said he should have dropped it, should have caught it, but he didn't. Still, it happens, right? And the 49ers offensive line moved on to the next play. But I would say a C is the cumulative grade for that unit. Speaking of Latu, tight ends. How about a nice solid B for the tight ends? Obviously, no Kittle. They expect him back this week. Dwelly, Werner, Fumagalli. Fumagalli over here, he's Mr. Reliable. Fumagalli seems like the perfect guy to put on your practice squad. Nobody's going to poach him. But, even if he's lower on the pecking order than the rookies, if he's on the practice squad, you can use your call-ups to bring him up. He's a guy that might be lower on the pecking order than the rookies, but is called up for a game or two, and therefore is an earlier option to play than the rookies because of his reliability. We saw a couple nice catches for Fumagalli in Vegas, and yesterday we saw him recover the fumble. Johnny on the spot to recover the fumble, and I think his blocking has been good too. Dwelly, the 49ers know that he's not a high ceiling player, but he's a high floor player. they like that. Werner surpassed Dwelly on the depth chart last year. So I have 3 tight ends making it, but Cameron Latu did correct course yesterday. I said that he missed the pass that he himself said he should have caught from Trey Lance, but he did catch the touchdown. He did catch a nice pass from Sam Darnold. That's good. So is the steadiness of Braden Willis, but Willis has been playing mainly with the 2s and the 3s. Not really sure if he's going to make the football team or if they're going to try to bring both of these guys back to the practice squad. If this shifts and Latu has got a lot of sheer strength and power, does work his way into the mix, well, 49ers carry 4 tight ends, and then you got a clear spot somewhere else on this 53-man roster. So tight ends, so-so. Cameron Latu, big touchdown at the end of the game. Fumagalli steady. So I'd give the tight ends a B, and then we have to average that grade with the receivers. Deebo Samuel's looking lighter and more explosive than I've seen Deebo Samuel at any point of his 49ers career. I mean, it really is something with Deebo Samuel. Odd year Deebo, I talk about it all the time. 2019, they ran him to death in the offseason as a rookie. Richard Sherman still laughs about that. 2021, skinny Deebo, that's what they call him at training camp. 2023, it's shirtless selfie, Deebo Samuel, sending pictures to Kyle Shanahan. 2020 and 2022 were ruined by broken foot 2020, which led to a bunch of injuries. 2022, Deebo Samuel didn't work as hard, and he admitted this himself because he was distracted by the contract stuff. So he is refocused. He watched the tape of himself last year and was embarrassed by it. Deebo Samuel was ready to go for the 49ers. He looked ready to go. Brandon Ayuk looked ready to go. That first drive from Brock Purdy was really damn impressive. And because of that, and Jawan Jennings made some nice catches yesterday. So all 3 of the 49ers top receivers made plays. And that's before we even get to Ronnie Bell. Now, we talk about Ronnie Bell. That's who I wrote about yesterday. So I can't not go with this. We can share the screen. We could find Ronnie Bell for you. Put him up on the screen. There he is. Rookie standout watch. Ronnie Bell, who says that Deebo Samuel has taken him under his wing. That's a good guy to be your mentor, Deebo Samuel, especially if yards after the catch are your focus. I mean, Ronnie Bell looked like Deebo Light out there. He's got to catch the football. He's got to hold on to it with more efficiency. But 7 catches, 114 yards. Can't give him an A+, can't even give him an A because of the fumble, because of the drop that turned into an interception. But you can give Ronnie Bell a solid B. And if the tight ends get a solid B, well, then the receivers and tight ends combined get a solid B. Now, running backs, I have a B for them as well. And it's going to be an incomplete grade because of the issue that I talked about before. Everybody's trying to crap on Ty Davis Price for missing in pass protection on the Brock Purdy snap. But you look at the evidence. I've talked to some coaches, not with the Niners, just outside coaches. I wanted their opinion. It sounds like that Brock Purdy play, that sack, that might have been Jalen Moore's fault for down blocking and not helping out against the defensive end. Again, you don't normally ask a tight end to block a running back to block a defensive end, and it's really rare to ask a running back coming off of a play fake to block a defensive end. So maybe that's why Ty Davis Price looked so damn shocked on the play, because Jalen Moore was supposed to take it. Anyway, incomplete grade, I need to know for sure, because that was a big play, right? If no matter how well you run, if that's your assignment as Ty Davis Price and you're missing it, it's going to put a real damper on your grade. But I think he's running well. We're going to find out on that block, right? And I'll follow up, I promise. But so you should subscribe because you know that I'm going to follow up. But I think he's running well. There was a third down where Nick Zakelj moved DJ Jones one-on-one, former 49er, and it took some really good vision from Ty Davis Price to find that first down. He's running powerfully. Jordan Mason is running powerfully. There's going to be a whole lot more space for this unit when Christian McCaffrey's out there. You can count on that. Probably a whole lot more space when that starting offensive line is out there full time. You can also count on that. So for now, no glaring errors here for the 49ers running backs outside of that potential error by Ty Davis Price. But I promise you, I'm going to find out what happens with the evaluation there. There also, of course, was Jack Coletto. Scored the 49ers' first touchdown of the day. Fullback, a jackhammer out of Oregon State. Jack Coletto is here on the 49ers depth chart, highlighted in yellow. Does he make the team? Does somebody poach him if he doesn't? I don't think they do, just because it's going to be hard for teams to fit players, even Swiss Army knives, because everybody's dealing with some sort of a cramped area on their roster now. But if the 49ers can make sure that Jack Coletto stays around as a fullback on the practice squad, they have the heir apparent, I think, to Kyle Juszczyk. That run was fun when Jack Coletto the catch from Sam Darnold ran it into the end zone. Looked like he was going to get popped, but he slowed speeds, changed direction at just the right time to move into the end zone untouched. Smart player, Jack Coletto is, versatile player. Cool stuff for the 49ers to be able to have an understudy for Kyle Juszczyk. And I think that what they really liked about Coletto was the sheer versatility that he showed in college. I mean, he played quarterback, he played tight end, played wide receiver. I think he lined up at slot for Oregon State. He played linebacker, running back, and fullback. And we know the 49ers love positionless skill position versatility from their fullback, Kyle Juszczyk. So no reason they can't get some from the man, Jack Coletto, the jackhammer who scored a nice touchdown. We'll see how his future evolves with the 49ers and if the practice squad is one of his things. All right, we got a high watermark of viewers for the show on right now. Drum roll for the quarterback's grade. I don't have drums. I just have a little pen right here. Drum roll for the quarterback's grade. Quarterbacks, A. What else can you ask for? Brock Purdy looks damn good, right? Sharp as hell yesterday. 5 of 6, didn't make a mistake. Leads the 49ers right down the field. First game coming off of a major injury. A for Brock Purdy. Sam Darnold comes in, doesn't come close to making a major mistake. Plays clean football, pushed the ball down the field. A couple really, really impressive throws. I talk about the cross-field one to Daz Newsome. I talk about the slant to Chris Conley. I talk about the one where Sam Darnold stood in there as he got drilled and hit Jawan Jennings 20 yards downfield. That was nullified by a holding penalty, but Darnold was good. Darnold is answering the questions that the 49ers had, and they thought that he would turn it around because that's why they signed him for $4.5 million on a deal that's expandable to over $11 million. Sam Darnold was terrible in his time with the Jets. He was bad early on with Carolina, but he cut down the interception rate last year significantly for the Carolina Panthers. His interception rate was better than league average last season for the final 6 games of the season. That's after Darnold took over for Baker Mayfield. And then I have PJ Walker, too, on that team. But Darnold started the last 6. He played well. INT rate down. 49ers noticed. Kyle Shanahan figured, okay, this is a guy that started to turn around his career. I love the talent. I've loved the talent since he was at USC. Kyle Shanahan decided to take a chance on Sam Darnold. So far, he's rewarded him by only throwing 1 interception all training camp and, well, all in practice. And he threw an interception yesterday, but it wasn't his fault. It was a great throw to Ronnie Bell on the slant pattern. Had to put some mustard on it. Had to fit into a tight window. Ronnie Bell, can't believe he didn't catch it. It bounced up in the air, was intercepted by the Denver Broncos. But you look at that and there are no glaring errors. And I asked Kyle Shanahan today, was that the sack by Randy Gregory, was that Darnold's fault? Nope. Wasn't Darnold's fault. That was a play where the 49ers protection busted again. Jalen Moore busting protection on the left side. So what you're looking for at quarterback 2 is a high floor guy. Darnold is showing that with this career renaissance, he might be a higher floor guy than people initially thought. Then you move on to Trey Lance. And Trey Lance, he needed a good outing badly yesterday because he didn't look good against Las Vegas in week 1 of the preseason. Didn't look good at all. Well, Trey went out there, threw a pick. Looked shaky for sure. I mean, when you throw a pick on a screen pass, it's not great. But even, that pick was a sandwich, right? There were some good shorter throws before that. There were some good shorter throws after that. And then there was Trey Lance absolutely catching fire over the final stretch of this game to the point where he went 6 of 6 there to close, threw a touchdown pass into the slot to Cam Latu, found Ronnie Bell multiple times, including on the 43-yard catch and run, the game-winning field goal. The crowd went crazy when Trey Lance went out there. Really good energy from the 49ers crowd. They still support the number 3 overall pick. And then the team went crazy after Trey Lance found Cam Latu. Brandon Ayuk ran out onto the field in street clothes, and they threw a flag on the 49ers bench for premature celebration or for the sideline taking over the field. And Ayuk apologized today sarcastically on social media, saying that Lance the Latu had him in a different headspace. You could see how much Trey Lance's teammates respect him, like him. You could see how much the 49ers fan base, the normal part of the 49ers fan base, still likes him. I mean, it is what it is. Lance was not the worst quarterback in the world. He was not a unsalvageable bust after his poor performance against the Raiders, which was his first performance since major surgery and major injury. He also isn't the greatest thing since sliced bread right now. I mean, all he did yesterday was work against the backups, and he looked a lot better than he did the week before working against the backups. But this was later in the games. There's some threes mixed in. The field's a little bit more stretched out. I mean, you can't go one or the other. You can't call Trey Lance trash at this point. You can't call him terrific at this point. Terrific or trash, it's neither. Trey Lance is just a promising quarterback that needs more time. And the 49ers are actually in good position to give him some time. Maybe not game reps beyond next week unless Brock Purdy gets hurt, but practice time. Meeting room time. There's no reason to jettison Trey Lance right now because you're not going to get an awesome offer for him, and you need quarterback insurance. You've actually spent your entire offseason trying to build up that quarterback insurance. So the 49ers quarterbacks do get an A because cumulatively this quarterback room did succeed for this team yesterday. We'll see what they do next week on Friday. I think it's going to be more of a dress rehearsal style, so you're going to see a lot more of Brock Purdy. You're going to see Trey Lance maybe go second in the order again. Maybe Sam Darnold's going to go second. I don't know who's going to go first. I think Kyle Shanahan might try to divvy that up evenly. And he'll probably want to get Brandon Allen a final audition before cut down day. So we'll see if the quarterbacks can replicate their grade next week against the LA Chargers. Final run through: quarterbacks A, running backs B, but incomplete. I need to do a good job reporting, and I'm going to try that this week. I'm going to try to find out who was at fault for the Ty Davis Price mix up and the Brock Purdy sack. It might have been Jalen Moore's fault, so we'll find out for sure. Tight ends, wide receivers, B. Offensive line needs to develop more depth. That's a C. D line, B minus. They can just use more depth actually showing up. They're still waiting for Nick Bosa. Linebackers, A, best position unit on this 49ers team. Secondary, B minus. It was a mixed bag, but they've got options, and people were worried about their lack of options before camp started. So I think that's actually flowing in the right direction. Special teams for the 49ers, D. I wouldn't worry all too much about it, though, because you're going to see very different units once the regular season starts. Right now, it's a lot of guys just trying out. All right. Looking through some of these questions to see if there are questions. '49ers won't start cutting players until August 29th. That is 9 days from now. All the cuts happen at once. Post some questions. I don't see any questions. I don't see that many. I won't stay around all too long. I want to go eat anyway. Practice is tomorrow. We got practice tomorrow, Tuesday and Wednesday, day off on Thursday, game on Friday. My middle name is Matt, but that's not my name. My name's David. I think you mean Matt Barrows. All right, it's going to be time for me to go eat. Burrito time. I think that's what we're going to do tonight. So if you want to come say hi, be eating some good food at one of my favorite taquerias. I do that very, very often. Who's my surprise cut? Probably Isaiah Oliver if I had to say something right now, but I don't know yet. We got 9 days to go, so let's let that play out. All right, I let it get up to, I don't know if it's a sore subject. I mean, I appreciate the respectful question from Dave here. There hasn't been any movement yet to report. It's like a game of chicken. Our next deadline is probably week 1, unless Bosa really wants to get into camp sooner, just to get a little bit of a callus. So we'll see. Maybe it's going to surprise us tomorrow. I don't know, but both sides are keeping quiet, which is good. That's good and respectful as we wait for this to unfold. All right, 49 minutes. That's a perfect length for a show covering the 49ers. See you guys later.